My cheating wife smirked and said, "After 20 years with a loser like you, I've finally found a real man. He's a retired officer, so don't even think about trying to stop me. He'll crush you." I stayed silent, removed her from my life, and watched as karma delivered the ultimate revenge. Daniel sat frozen at the dining table, his fingers trembling as he stared at the smug figure standing before him. "After 20 years with a loser like you," Sophia spat, her voice filled with contempt, "I've finally found a real man. He's a retired officer, someone who knows how to treat me." Her smirk widened, daring him to react. The weight of her words crashed over him like a tidal wave. In that instant, Daniel realized his world would never be the same. The sun was setting as Daniel sat at the dining table, staring at the remnants of the life he had built over 20 years. The faint clinking of a glass in the kitchen caught his attention. When he turned, his wife, Sophia, stood there with a smug expression that didn't match the woman he thought he knew. Her arms were crossed, her chin tilted slightly upward in a defiant pose, as if daring him to react. A self-satisfied smirk tugged at her lips, her eyes gleaming with a mix of triumph and disdain. She leaned her weight onto one foot, exuding an arrogance that filled the room as she dropped the bombshell. "After 20 years with a loser like you," she began, her voice dripping with contempt, "I've finally found a real man. He's a retired officer, Daniel, a man with power and status. Don't even think about trying to stop me. He'll crush you." Daniel's heart sank. The words hit like a punch to the gut, but he kept his composure. He'd always prided himself on being a calm man, even in the face of adversity. His silence only seemed to fuel Sophia's arrogance. She leaned closer, a smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. "You should be thanking me for sticking around this long. But don't worry, I'll make this easy for you," she sneered. Daniel took a deep breath, rising slowly from his chair. As he did, memories of their early years flooded his mind. He remembered the nights they spent talking until sunrise, the laughter they shared over burnt dinners in their tiny first apartment, and the way he used to feel like they could conquer the world together. But those moments had been replaced by coldness, by the sharp edge of her words cutting through the last remnants of their bond. He felt the weight of the sacrifices he'd made, the extra hours at work, the vacations postponed, the dreams put on hold, all for her. And now, she dismissed it all with a smirk. It would have been easy to lash out, but Daniel knew better. Restraint was his weapon now, and dignity his shield. His mind swirled with emotions, anger, disbelief, and a pang of sadness he couldn't quite suppress. But through it all, one thought remained clear. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing him break. Memories of the sacrifices he had made for their life together flashed before him, only to be overshadowed by the sharp sting of her words. It would have been easy to scream or demand answers, but Daniel knew better. Restraint was his weapon now, and dignity his shield. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked past her, opened the front door, and gestured outside. "Take what you need and leave, Sophia. Don't look back." For a moment, she seemed caught off guard, but her bravado quickly returned. She grabbed her keys, turned on her heel, and left without another word. The door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the house. Daniel stood there for a moment, the weight of 20 years pressing down on him. But he wasn't broken, not yet. The days that followed were quiet. The silence in the house was deafening, but it gave Daniel the space to think. He wasn't the same man Sophia had painted him to be. He wasn't a loser. 4 years, he'd worked tirelessly to provide a stable life for their family. He'd sacrificed his dreams to ensure Sophia had everything she ever wanted. And now, with her gone, he realized just how much he'd lost of himself in the process. Daniel began to rebuild. One morning he laced up his old running shoes, ones he hadn't touched in years, and hit the trail near his house. The fresh morning air filled his lungs, and though the first steps felt heavy, a flicker of determination pushed him forward. By the end of the week, he was running longer distances, feeling stronger with each stride. At work, he dove into a long-neglected project. One night, as he presented his solution to a team of skeptics, the room erupted in applause. His boss pulled him aside later and said, "Daniel, this is the kind of leadership we need." These moments weren't just wins. They were validations of the man he always had the potential to be. At first, every step felt heavy, but as the days passed, his strength grew, mirroring his determination to move forward. At work, he took on a challenging project that had been lingering in the background for months. Late nights at his desk turned into moments of triumph when he solved problems his peers had deemed impossible. Slowly but surely, Daniel rediscovered his worth through these small victories, each one a reminder of the man he always had the potential to be. As a software engineer, his expertise was in demand, and he threw himself into a major project that would earn him both respect and a substantial bonus. But Sophia's words lingered in his mind. Her real man, this retired officer, seemed like a phantom, someone she believed would elevate her life to a level she thought Daniel couldn't provide. Daniel didn't seek revenge. He didn't have to. Life had a way of balancing the scales. Months passed. Daniel was thriving, though he kept tabs on Sophia through mutual friends and social media, not out of spite, but curiosity. It didn't take long for cracks to appear in her new fairy tale. Sophia's real man, Michael, wasn't quite the hero she had envisioned. At first, Sophia had reveled in the attention he gave her, but soon the cracks began to show. Michael's temper was explosive, and his gambling problem drained their finances faster than she could comprehend. One night, at a gala she attended alone, she overheard whispers about his public outburst at a bar. "He's a mess," someone said. Poor Sophia thought she upgraded, but she walked straight into a disaster. As the rumors mounted, Sophia began to realize the life she had abandoned wasn't as worthless as she once believed. While Michael's past as a retired officer gave him an air of authority, it turned out his retirement wasn't as glamorous as she had hoped. The rumors began with hushed whispers at a networking event Daniel attended. He overheard two colleagues chatting near the buffet table. "Did you hear about Michael? He's been blacklisted at the casino downtown," one said. "And I heard he got into a shouting match at a bar last week," the other added. Later that evening, Daniel's phone buzzed with a message from an old friend. "Sophia's new life isn't as perfect as she thought. Turns out Michael's temper and gambling issues are making things messy." The pieces started to fall into place, painting a picture of the chaos Sophia had walked into. Daniel couldn't help but marvel at how karma was playing out. Sophia's luxurious new life quickly devolved into one of instability and chaos. One evening, Daniel received an unexpected call from a mutual acquaintance. "You'll never guess what's happening with Sophia," the friend began. "She's been showing up at events alone. Michael's apparently in debt up to his ears. Word is, she's regretting leaving you." Daniel couldn't help but chuckle. He didn't feel satisfaction. Not exactly, but there was a quiet vindication in knowing that Sophia's arrogance had led her straight into the life she deserved. A year after Sophia left, Daniel was invited to a gala hosted by a tech company he had recently partnered with. It was a black-tie affair filled with high-profile individuals. Daniel arrived confident and poised, a far cry from the man Sophia had dismissed as a loser. As fate would have it, Sophia was there. She spotted him across the room, her eyes widening as she took in his tailored suit and the easy way he conversed with the company's CEO. She approached him hesitantly, her once confident demeanor replaced with uncertainty. Her steps faltered as regret churned in her stomach. She thought back to the life she had walked away from, the stability, the quiet strength Daniel had always shown, the way he never let her down. Now, staring at him composed and thriving, she felt the full weight of her mistakes. Her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her clutch as she managed to murmur, "Daniel, you look good." Her shoulders were slightly hunched, and her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her clutch as she walked toward him. Sophia's mind raced, replaying the decisions that had brought her to this moment. Regret clung to her like a heavy fog, and for the first time in years, she felt small and unsure. As her eyes met Daniel's, she saw not the man she had dismissed but someone who had thrived in her absence, someone she had underestimated. The weight of that realization was unbearable. "Daniel," she said softly, "you look good." Daniel turned, meeting her gaze. For a moment he said nothing, letting the silence speak volumes. Finally, he smiled politely. Thank you, Sophia. I've been doing well. Her eyes flickered with something. Regret, perhaps. I heard about your project. Congratulations. You've really made something of yourself. He nodded. I have. And you? How are things with Michael? Her face fell. It's complicated. He's been going through some things. Daniel's smile didn't waver. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it works out for you. She opened her mouth to say something more, but Daniel excused himself, leaving her standing there. As he walked away, he didn't feel anger or sadness, only a sense of closure. Sophia had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. That night, Daniel reflected on everything he had been through. Sophia's betrayal had broken him for a time, but it had also been the catalyst for his transformation. He thought of how he'd rebuilt himself, step by step, proving to himself that he was capable of more than she ever believed. As he stared at the city lights, a soft breeze brushed past him. He realized his success wasn't about revenge, it was about rediscovering who he was. As for Sophia, her downfall was a reminder that karma worked best when left to its own devices. True strength, he realized, wasn't in winning someone back. It was in letting them go and moving forward. He had rediscovered his worth, rebuilt his life, and found strength in his independence. As he looked out over the city from his balcony, he realized something important. Karma didn't need help. It worked on its own timeline, delivering justice in its own way. The best revenge wasn't anger or retaliation. It was moving on and thriving. Sometimes, the best way to win is to let life deliver the lessons they refuse to learn.